We're talking about culture, we're talking about community, we're talking about cannabis. It's Jonathan Valdman from Forever Flowering. Please welcome Jonathan.
Hello? Is this working? Yeah? There we go. Thank you. Hello, CannaTech. How is everybody feeling today? Everybody's awake and alert? All right. My name is Jonathan Valdman. I'm here from Northern California in a small Sierra Mountain town called Grass Valley. We grow a lot of cannabis in Grass Valley. We have for many decades. And first of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone here at CannaTech for inviting me to be here. It's really an honor to come all the way to Israel. My father grew up in a small town in the north of Israel called Afula, and so I've spent my life coming and visiting Israel, and so it's really extra special for me to be able to come here today and speak about what I'm passionate about. So, sex. Everybody here is 18, right? Well, though I'm not here to talk about sex, sex is a very alluring topic, and it has a lot to do with the cultivation, the marketing, and the consumption of cannabis. A couple weeks ago, it was International Women's Day, and amongst other things was brought forth the notion of gender equality. And though I am fully on board with this notion, there are things about this statement that I can't totally agree with, because it is the woman that holds the true beauty of our species. She is the flower. She is the flower, the receptacle of what it takes to procreate. And this creates a type of beauty that no man can ever be equal to. Why do you think it is that we are so obsessed with the female portion of the cannabis plant? Sticky buds that smell, that we get to smoke, that we get to share with our friends, that we have this opportunity to be part of its creation, be part of its presence here. Most cultivators are terrified of the male plant. The male pollen can cause sinsemilla, without seeds, buds that are top shelf, to become seed-laden flowers that are undesirable to the connoisseur. However, it is the male pollen that holds the genetic treasure chest. It is the pollen that guarantees the coexistence between the male and the female cannabis plant. But wait, I digress. What would you talk about if you had 15 minutes to affect positive change in this world? I spent a lot of time thinking about this in preparation for today. So what I decided to talk about was my story. I'm a second-generation cannabis farmer. I grew up in Southern California in a very laid-back household. Grew up going to nude beaches, concerts, Grateful Dead shows. Cannabis has been part of my existence since I can remember. There's not a moment in my life that cannabis has not been some part of it. So in essence, I feel indebted to this plant. You know, the great Peter Tosh said, legalize it and I will advertise it. So I'm here to talk about cannabis. I've experienced growing indoors, outdoors, in greenhouses, in soilless methods, in soil mediums, growing synthetically and with organic modes of cultivation. I've been growing for 24 years. I've been growing legally since 1996 when California passed the first medical marijuana laws. And in the early 2000s, I found myself in Northern California in the Emerald Triangle in a county called Mendocino, California. And like my friends, I was living an organic lifestyle. I was driving biodiesel trucks. I was wearing hemp and really attempting to live off the land. But then at the end of the day, when I looked around, most of my friends had tens of thousands of watts of electricity burning in their barns with artificial lights, with grow lights, cultivating cannabis inside. And so it wasn't allowing me to really see that this circle was being closed. And so I stepped back to think about, what does the future of this industry look like? Because at that time, medical marijuana had only been legal for a few years, and it was very quasi-legal. But I foresaw where we are today when it's being talked about on a global scale. And at that time, I was playing with light deprivation in a very rudimentary way. And I saw light deprivation as being the future of commercial cannabis. So for those of you that don't know what light deprivation is, also referred to as light dep, in an indoor scenario, in order to make the plant flower, we control the amount of hours of darkness, 12 hours of darkness, 12 hours of light. Well, in a greenhouse, we do the exact same thing. But instead of turning lights on and off, we have a blackout curtain that closes and opens, mimicking the same light cycle, therefore coercing the plant into flowering. It's a really amazing way to produce cannabis using the sun and having this ability to have multiple crops every year, because that was the one thing that really was an issue for everybody, is that paycheck, that consistent paycheck that can come in when you're growing indoors. Because when you're growing outdoors under the sun, you just get that one crop. So what light deprivation greenhouse cultivation allows you to do is to have that indoor quality and control with outdoor efficiency and quantity. And this is the direction that I really saw the industry going in. And so that led me to founding Forever Flowering Greenhouses in 2006. 11 years ago, we became the first greenhouse company on the planet to service the cannabis industry exclusively. And we have always done so from a reason of efficiency and sustainability. We did not see an industry that was burgeoning with profit opportunities. What I was a cannabis grower, and I saw needs for what I needed to do. So then I created a company around it, and then we created a lifestyle around that. And today you see light dep as being the major way that most people are growing. With the amount of energy that you save in times of year, you can save up to 90% on your energy costs, which means you're going to have higher profit margins and lower production costs. So in those first few years, we spent a lot of time educating, because every day I'd get asked the question, why would you block light out of a greenhouse? So we spent a lot of time educating people as to what I was talking about, and that ability to have a bottom line that is also a triple bottom line, so that you're not only looking at the profit margins that you're making, but you're looking at your impact on the environment, how you're affecting positive change into the community, and being a responsible grower. So indoor growing. Why did people start growing cannabis indoors? The reason why, and I'm coming from a very California-centric perspective. In Northern California, everybody that was living in the Emerald Triangle was cultivating cannabis outdoors. And in the early 80s, the federal government came in what was called CAMP, the Campaign Against Marijuana Production. And they were arresting small farmers. They were seizing their properties. And in order to be safe and stay free, people decided to start growing indoors. Allowed them that ability to really stay below the radar and to continue doing what they were doing. However, one thing that was not taken into effect was the impact that amount of energy use was going to have environmentally. Today in California, about 9% of our energy use goes to indoor cannabis cultivation. The U.S.'s energy production, about 1.5% of all energy produced in America goes to indoor cannabis cultivation. And if you think about it, this industry, as old as it is only about 5 years old. Once the recreational really started hitting in Colorado and Washington, that's really when we started seeing these companies start budding up. And really, so many of these laws that are being written are looking at the plant as an industrial product, and they're making it so that you have to be zoned in areas that you're growing in warehouses, and you're not able to grow on a field. Thankfully, in California, in our current regulations, the state has recognized cannabis as an agricultural product. which is huge because now we can go to places like UC Davis that have been studying ag extensively for decades now, and we can go to them and ask them scenarios of how do we deal with these situations and these problems that we're having within the cannabis industry. So about 2 years ago, some gentlemen from Wall Street approached me and made an offer on my company. And the numbers they were throwing out sounded pretty good. And I had to really sit down and think about this because this is something that I birthed out of my life force, my passion for cannabis and for what I was doing. And the last thing that I wanted to be was a sellout, right? But again, those numbers sounded really good. And so what I did is I sat down and started thinking about what are the values of my company? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And my thought with this was, if I could create a set of values and make sure that my company was being run from those set of values, then it wouldn't really matter who was running the company. At least that's what I thought. Well, I didn't take the offer, but what I did do is I took these set of values and I created an organization called Greening Corporate Cannabis, or GCC. GCC was a social platform for like-minded individuals and businesses to come together and discuss the sustainable approach to cannabis production. Because really, if you look at the amount of cultivation that's going on right now and the impact that it's having, when we start exponentially adding that up, not only state by state, but nation by nation, what we're looking at is a potential environmental catastrophe if we don't take these things into consideration. And so GCC led me to co-founding a company called the Cannabis Conservancy, or TCC. The Cannabis Conservancy is a third-party certification for sustainability and best practices. We base our standards on company policy, on infrastructure, on cultivation practices, harvest procedures, energy use, water use, and waste streams. It's kind of like a B Corp meets LEED certification meets organic certification. We really look at the whole life cycle of the plant. And the whole idea is really this idea of how can we recognize people doing the right thing and then reward them for their efforts. And the way we decided to do that, which is, this is kind of like my baby, we came up with a QR code program called MyGrow. What MyGrow is it's the ability for a farmer to fill in a template, to tell their whole story, to tell their cultivation practices, to talk about their company values, to convey anything that they want to tell to the consumer so that the consumer, when they go into a dispensary and they see this QR code on packaging, they can scan it and now have an immediate relationship with the grower, with what they're doing, and now they can make an educated choice and decide what they want to consume and who they want to support. Because as a grower myself, the hardest thing about selling your product is that moment when you take those flowers and you hand them over to someone and then the entire story is lost. This allows that story to be told and so allows that value to stay within there. With all the talk about equalities and imbalances in this world right now, one thing that I'm really stoked about, the common thread that really runs through everything, is this endocannabinoid system. It's something that everybody on this planet shares, and in essence, it makes us wonder, is this plant here to serve our needs? Well, my question is it? Because who is the master and who is the servant? For the cannabis has been cultivated at every corner around this globe right now. And since cannabis prohibition, people have literally risked their lives in order to bring this medicine forth. Now understand too, when I say medicine, I see medicine applying to mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. So this community of people, this cannabis community, has operated in a subterranean manner and have had the ability to do so without government regulations, without formal banking, without corporate transportation, and without security. Like a mycelial sheath, we exist throughout this entire planet, able to transport these goods to wherever they need to go and to wherever people want them. Because most places you go on the planet, you can still score cannabis. And when this underground fungal mat fruits, what we see is the emergence of alternative communities, festivals, lifestyles, a certain way of living that people enjoy and want to be part of. There is an innate intelligence to this plant, and when combined with the human powers of doing, greatness can be achieved. There are few problems on this planet that exist that cannabis is either not the solution to or part of the equation to. Most people right now are focused on THC and CBD. However, 5 years ago, most people outside of Israel did not know what CBD is. And as research continues, what other cannabinoids are going to be discovered in the coming years? When we consider the possibilities of biofuels, plastic polymers, textiles, building materials, bioremediation of soil, we see that there's a never-ending potential to this plant. So when you go home this weekend and your mind is literally swimming of how do I get involved in the cannabis industry, I ask you to pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself what you are passionate about, because chances are cannabis also shares those passions. And when you decide what sector it is that you're going to get involved in, I ask you to consider forming this company from your values. Because to borrow the words from Ben Cohen of Ben & Jerry's, more people are not going to buy your product that are going to buy your product. So you may as well form your company and attract the customers that share that value set with you. Follow your bliss. Lend a hand, and love thy neighbor. And with that, I close with some words inspired by one of America's most memorable presidents. Ask not what the cannabis industry can do for you. Ask what you can do for the cannabis industry. Thank you.
Like a mycelial sheath, Jonathan Valdman.